Welcome back to the second session of translation theory and the practice. We stopped last time on this slide talking about translation methods and strategies. When faced with translation challenges, translators draw on an established toolkit of methods and strategies developed through decades of professional practice and scholarly analysis. Understanding these techniques helps you approach a translation systematically rather than relying solely on intuition, and it provides vocabulary for analyzing and discussing translation choices. Direct versus oblique translation. Translation theorists distinguish between direct translation, where source and target source structures align with enough to transfer fairly directly, and oblique translation where structural or conceptual differences require more substantial translation. Modest translation involves moving between these approaches as different segments present different challenges. Borrowing taking a word directly from the source language when no good target language equivalent exists. Example, so she in English, weekend in French, useful for cultural specific items or concepts. Through overuse can make translations feel foreign or pretentious. Calc, which means literally translating a phrase structure from source to target language. Skyscraper from French gratte-ciel, literally scrape sky, is a calc. Works when target language can accommodate the structure but risks awkwardness if forced. Literal translation, word for word, or phrase by phrase translation, where source and target structures align. The default approach is when it produces natural, accurate results, but shouldn't be forced when language is diverse, structurally or idiomatically. Adaptation, replacing a culturally specific references with sometimes uh, or something functionally equivalent in target culture, challenging a baseball metaphor to a soccer metaphor for audiences unfamiliar with baseball represents adaptation, preserving communicative function through cultural substitution. Strategic decision making. These techniques aren't rigid rules but flexible tools. Expert translators develop judgment about when to apply which strategy. The judgment comes from considering multiple factors: text type and purpose, audience needs and expectations, cultural contexts, client preferences, and the specific communicative function of each segment. The sky strategic awareness, making conscious choices rather than translating automatically, and being able to justify those choices with reference to translation principles and contextual factors. Case study applying methods. Consider translating this English sentences to Spanish. She kicked the bucket last week, leaving her family in the red. This requires multiple strategies, equivalents for kicked the bucket, perhaps Estereo la bata, literal translation for last week, la semana pasada, and likely adaptation or explanation for in the red, since Spanish uses different imagery for that in deududas rather than color metaphors. Translation as intercultural communication. Translation is fundamentally an act of international communication. It doesn't just transfer linguistic meanings, but enables understanding across cultural boundaries. This perspective shifts how we think about translation quality and the translator's role. A successful translation doesn't just render words accurately, it facilitates authentic communication between cultures that conceptualize the world differently. Bridging gaps, translators serve as cultural mediators, helping readers understand not just what a text says, but what it means within its cultural context, revealing perspectives. Working between cultures help translators and readers recognize how their own cultural assumption shape perception and expression, eliminating context. Effective translation makes culturally embedded meanings accessible without requiring readers to become cultural experts themselves, navigating difference rather than erasing cultural difference. Good translation acknowledges it while ensuring communication succeeds despite it, enabling exchange translation makes possible the global exchange of ideas, commerce, art, and knowledge that characterizes our interconnected world. Now let's move to cultural context and interpretation. Meaning isn't universal, it's culturally constructed. Consider color symbolism, or white represents purity and weddings in Western cultures, but mourning and funerals in many Asian cultures. A translator working with text that uses white symbolically must recognize this cultural loading and decide how to handle it for target readers. This cultural dimensions permeates all levels of translation, politeness, SRGs differ across cultures, rhetorical organization patterns vary, even basic concepts like family, success, or home carry different connotations and boundaries in different cultural contexts. Translator as cultural mediator, your role spans beyond linguistic conversion to cultural interpretation. You help readers understand why source culture expresses ideas in particular ways, even when those ways differ from target culture norms. This requires both deep cultural knowledge and sensitivity to how translation choices shape cross-cultural understanding. Viewing translation as intellectual communication reminds us that our work has real consequences for how cultures perceive and understand each other. Each translation either reinforces stereotypes or challenges them, either both bridges or maintains barriers. This ethical dimension should inform every translation choice we make. Now let's move to the translation in practice exercises overview. Theory provides essential foundations, but translation is ultimately a practical skill developed through repeated practice. This course includes translation exercises across diverse text types, each presenting unique challenges that build different aspects of your translation competence. Practice transforms theoretical understanding into embodied skill. Types of practice texts. You will work with multiple genres, each requiring different translation strategies and priorities. Technical manuals, precision and clarity are paramount. Technical translation demands accuracy and terminology, clear step-by-step organization, and careful handling of measurements, specifications, and safety warnings. You learn to research, specialize vocabulary, and maintain consistency throughout lengthy documents. Literary texts, poetry, it challenges you to capture meaning, sound, rhythm, and imagery simultaneously. You'll confront questions about whether to maintain original matter, how to handle rhythm, and how to preserve metaphorical networks while ensuring comprehensibility. Literary translation is the most creative form of translation. Song lyrics, combining challenges of poetry with the constraint of singability. A song translation requires attention to syllable count, stress pattern, and how words feel in the mouth. You'll balance meaning preservation with musical consideration, sometimes making difficult choices about what to prioritize, humor and comedy. Perhaps the most culturally specific genre, humor tests your ability to recognize why something is funny in the source culture and a find ways to create equivalent humorous effects in the target culture. You will work with wordplay, cultural references, and timing, often requiring substantial adaptation. Commentary and critical reflection, simply producing translations isn't enough. Professional development requires critical reflection on your choices for each exercise. You will write commentary explaining challenges you identified. What Simply producing translations isn't enough. Professional development requires critical reflection on your choices. For each exercise, you will write commentary explaining challenges you identified, what made this text difficult to translate, where did languages or cultures diverge, the searches you applied, which translation techniques did you use, why did you choose those approaches, alternatives you considered, what other solutions did you contemplate? Why did you reject them? Uncertainties remaining. Where are you unsure about your choices? What do you need to resolve those uncertainties? This metacognitive practice, thinking about your thinking, accelerates learning by making your decision making process conscious and analyzable. Over time, you'll develop intuition about translation problem, but that intuition will be grounded in explicit understanding of principles and strategies. Translation exercises aren't about expressing perfect translation immediately. They are about developing the analytical skills, strategic thinking, and creative problem solving ability that expert translators process or possess. I'll embrace challenges as learning opportunities rather than tests you must pass. Translation process step by step. Expert translators do not simply read source text and write target text in one pass. Instead, they follow a systematic process that breaks translation into manageable stages, each with specific goals. Understanding and practicing this process improves post translation quality and efficiency while reducing the cognitive load of trying to do everything simultaneously. Text analysis and comprehension before writing anything thoroughly. Analyze the source text, identify its purpose, audience, genre, register, and key terminology. Look up at unfamiliar words and concepts. Consider cultural context and identify potential translation challenges. Understand not just what the text says, but what it's trying to accomplish. Question to ask: Who is the intended audience? What is the text communicative function? What tune and register does it use? Are there technical terms requiring researches or research? What cultural reference might need explanation? Draft translation, initial rendering. Produce a complete first draft, focusing on capturing meaning rather than perfecting style. Do not agonize over every word choice. Mark uncertainty and keep moving. The goal is getting ideas into the target language so you can work with them. Expect that draft to be rough, that's normal and appropriate. Practical tips, leave notes to yourself about problematic sections. Use bracket for uncertain translations like term check this. Do not delete alternative translations you're considering. Keep them in comments for view or review. Revision, accuracy, and style. With a complete draft, step back and revise systematically. Check accuracy against source text. Have you missed anything? Changed meanings unintentionally? Then refine style, improve clarity, flow, and naturalness. This is where you polish rough translations into professional quality work. You may revise multiple times. Revision strategies read this through for one issue at a time. First, checking accuracy, then terminology consistency, then sentence flow. Compare particularly challenging segments against the original. Read aloud to catch awkward phrasing. Final proofreading and quality assurance. The final stage captures surface errors types, grammatical mistakes, formatting inconsistencies. Read as if you're a target language reader encountering this text for the first time, checking that numbers, names, and technical terms are correct. Ensure formatting matches any client specifications. This stage prevents small errors from undermining otherwise excellent work. Quality checks, spell checks, but do not rely on it exclusively. Verify all numbers and measurements. Check that paragraph breaks and the formatting are appropriate. Confirm consistency in terminology, especially for repeatedly used technical terms. Why follow a process? Separating translation into stages prevents cognitive overload. Trying to simultaneously comprehend source text, transfer meaning, and perfect target language style is mentally exhausted and produces worse results than addressing each concern sequentially. A systematic process also makes it easier to identify where problems occurred if translation quality issues arise. Time management, professional translators budget time across these stages, typically spending 20 to 25% on analysis and research, 40 to um, 50% on drafting, 25 to 30% on revision, and 5 to 10% on final proofreading. Resist the temptation to rush through early stages. Thorough analysis and research prevent problems that would require more time to fix during revision. So let's move now to tools and resources for translators. Modern translators work with an extensive toolkit of resources and technology that enhance accuracy, efficiency, and quality, while human judgment remains irreplaceable. Strategic use of tools allow translators to focus cognitive energy on genuinely challenging decisions rather than routine lookups. Knowing what resources exist and how to use them effectively is a core professional competency. Dictionaries and Glossaries. Bilingual dictionaries provide word equivalents, but should be used critically. They cannot capture context-specific meanings. Monolingual dictionaries in both source and target languages help you understand the nuances and the usage. Specialized glossaries for technical fields provide domain-specific terminology with precise definitions. Recommended Oxford English Dictionary, Real Academia Española, specialized terminology databases like I8 Interactive Terminology for Europe, Corpora and Parallel Texas. Corpora large databases of authentic language use help you see how words and phrases are actually used in context. The parallel texts, translations of similar documents provide models for how others have handled similar translation challenges. These resources ground translation choices in real usage patterns. Example, Lingui, Reverse Context, Google Box for finding parallel texts, British National Corpus. Translation memory software, computer assisted translation CAT tools store previously translated segments and suggest them when similar texts appear. Uh, Ensure consistency and improving efficiency on large or repetitive projects. Their industry standard for technical translation CAT tools do not translate automatically. They assist human translators. Popular tools is the Ultrados, MQ, WordFast, Omega T, free and open sources. Now let's move to machine translation benefits and limitations. Machine translation MT has improved dramatically with neural network approaches, but it remains a tool requiring human oversight rather than replacement for human translators. MT can provide useful first drafts for some text types, help you understand source text in unfamiliar languages, or suggest alternatives you hadn't considered. When MT helps straightforward technical text, getting the gist of source material, generating initial drafts for heavy post editing, translating highly repetitive content. Hmm. OMT fails idioms and figurative language, cultural nuances, and context dependent meanings, maintaining consistent style and the tone, creative or literary texts requiring cultural adaptation. Never use empty output without thorough revision. Unedited machine translation is unprofessional and often inaccurate or misleading. Consider MT a tool that requires skilled operation, not an autonomous solution. Subject matter experts, when translating specialized content, do not hesitate to consult expert in the field. A quick conversion with someone knowledge about the subject can resolve uncertainty that should otherwise require hours of research. Professional translators build networks of contacts they can consult. Online resources and forums, professional translators communicate like pros.com and Translators Cafe offer forums where you can ask questions, share resources, and learn from experienced colleagues. Language-specific forums like Word Reference provide detailed discussions of usage and translation issues. Now let's go to style guide and standards, style guides and standards. Organizations like the American Medical Association, Associated Press, and various government agencies publish style guides specifying how to handle terminology, formatting, the conventions, and specific domination formality with relevant style guides ensures your translations meet professional standards. So we can say that translators' first obligation is to recognize what they do not know, and their second is to know where to find answers. Now let's go for ethical and professional considerations. Translation isn't purely technical work. It involves ethical responsibilities to clients, readers, source texts, authors, and the professional itself. Professional translators navigate complex ethical terrain, making decisions that affect how information and culture flow across linguistic boundaries. Understanding these ethical dimensions is essential for responsible practice. So, confidentiality and client relationships. Translators frequently work with sensitive information, medical records, legal documents, business plans, unpublished manuscripts. Professional ethics require strict um, confidentiality. Never discuss client information with others. Use secure methods for file transmission and storage, and honor non-disclosure agreements. Breaching confidentiality damages clients and undermines professional trust. Intellectual property and copyright. Questions of ownership arise in translation. Generally, copyright in the original text belongs to its author, while copyright in the translation belongs to the translator uh, or their employer if working as an employee. Always clarify usage rights in contracts to understand whether you're transferring full copyright or licensing specific uses of your translation. Translator responsibility and accountability. You're responsible for your translation accuracy and quality. If you lack competence in a specified domain or language, declining work as an ethical choice. Do not mislead clients about your qualifications. Acknowledge limitations honestly and recommend colleagues when appropriate. Your professional reputation depends on delivering quality work consistently, navigating bias and maintaining neutrality. Translators encounter source texts expressing views they may disagree with. Professional ethics generally require faithful representation of the source text, meaning even when you disagree with it. However, this doesn't mean complicity. You can decline work that violates your values when translating. Clearly distinguish between representing source text meanings and endorsing them. Ethical dilemmas in practice. Real translation work represents genuine ethical dilemmas without clear-cut answers. Should you correct obvious errors in the source text or translate it as written? How do you handle currently offensive content when translating? When marketing materials contain exaggerated claims, do you moderate them in translation? If you discover a client is using your translation for purposes you find objectable, what's your resource? Professional translator organizations like the American Translators Association provides ethical guidelines, but individual attachment is often required. Develop a clear personal ethical framework before facing these situations professionally. So let's move to translator visibility. Historically, translators were expected to be invisible, producing translations that read as if never translated. Contemporary thinking recognizes translators as creative professionals who should receive credit for their work. Advocate for visible attribution, your name on translated books, credits in translated films, acknowledgement in translated documents. Translation is skilled creative work deserving of recognition. Ethics aren't abstract principles, but practical guides for navigating the real challenges and responsibilities of professional translation work. As you develop your practice, actively reflect on the ethical dimensions of your choices and seek guidance from experienced professionals and professional organizations. So we will stop here and we'll continue, inshallah, the last and the final session of literary translation or translation theory and practice next session. Until next time, tata for now.